Okay, so Torah creates a healing for all flesh. Who needs a healing?
Barak Benjamin ben Rachel Blima, Yehudis Golda Basalisa Hana, Haim Yaakov Zev ben Sarah, Yosef Yitzhak ben Lior, and Shoshana Bas Hana.
For Shlema B'Korev. Anybody else? Rav Yitzchak Feivish and Braina Malka soll haben for Shlema B'Korev. And totally gesund. Okay. Amen, amen. 23 of the month. In the winter of 5652, 1891 to 1892, when my father taught me in the book of Tanya, this is nice, thinking about the Rebbe Rashav learning with his little son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, reading the second chapter in Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe tells us that the second soul, Nefesh HaShenis, the second soul, this is where he introduces the godly soul, is actually a chelek eleka mimal, is a part of God above. He explained, there's a key word missing. Chelek eleka mimal mamish is a part of God above actually. So the Rebbe Rashav explained to his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the connotations of the word above, memal, and mamish, are actually contradictory. Above indicates the most spiritual of spiritual levels, while mamosh, if something has mamoshes, it's thick with physicality, describes the most material of material things. He explained that this is the unique quality of the second soul, meaning the godly soul, that though it is the epitome of the spiritual, it has an effect on the most material of materiality. It joins the above with below and below with above. Okay, that's what we've been gifted. And with that gift, we'll learn lessons in Tanya. We're starting a new letter. Epistle 7, page 120. And in Chayenu, it starts on page 89. Okay, and look what the Amorim. Kapitel Zion is on page Kuf Yud Aleph. Okay, the Alter Rebbe is changing the topic. I don't know if he ever really changes the topic. The topic is always about how to bring deeper adherence and passionate energy into D down here below to peel away the darkness and create the effusion of redemptive light. That's the general topic, how to, but from a different angle. Okay, Ashreinu Matev Chalkenu Umarorim Gorelenu. How happy and how good is our chelek, our portion, and how sweet is our lot. So in the process of this letter and further, he's going to explain the difference between what's our portion and what's our lot. So first he quotes, Ki Hashem manas chelki v'koisei. That Hashem is the portion, he's my portion, and he's my cup. And then he says, Chavolim nafsuli, the pasuk goes on, a portion, an inheritance, nafluli. You may recognize this word chevel from a metaphor that the Alter Rebbe gave us way back, not way back, somewhat back. Chevel also means a rope. A rope is our inheritance. And he used that mashal to say, just like, two things, just like a multi-stranded woven rope, like a sea rope that you tie a boat to, if you cut one strand, it gets a little weaker. So imagine that this rope contains 613 strands. So the more you cut each of the strands, the more thin and unstrong is the rope, meaning the more separation between you and Hashem. That was one mashal. And then the rope He says, if you shake, if you have a rope from top to bottom and you shake it down at the bottom, the top will move also, which is a mashal for the arousal from below, creating an arousal from above. But chelik itself means particularly a portion. Lahavin lashin chelkenu, to understand this language of chelik, a portion. V'goyrolenu, these two words that are used in the opening. Happy is our chelik, and how sweet is our portion. To understand that, we have to understand the language which is frequent in the mouths of our sages, which says, Ein lechelik be'elokei Yisrael. If a person completely denies and overtly denies his connection with Hashem, and even perhaps the existence of Hashem, so he has no portion in the God of Israel. Again, the word chelik. And we're understanding what's the difference between chelik meaning portion and goralenu meaning lot. So if a person is like that, as I described, ein le chelik ve'elokei Yisrael, he has no portion. Ki agam delecher elei shayak loshen chelik klal be'elokus yisborah. Even though, if you think about it, the word portion really has no applicability to God himself, because God is not divided into portions. God is all that there is, the all-encompassing. God is not divided into portions. So what does it mean a person has no part, no portion in God? God has no portions. Okay, so this is the characteristic way of all my morning. I say this big question, or 5, 6, 7 big questions, working toward an answer. So let's work toward the answer. What's it mean to associate God with portions, pieces? Achayinin is this, as is written, about Yaakov, Vayikra Kel Elakai Yisrael. He called to him, using the name Kel, Aleph Lamed, the God of Israel, Pirish, which means, in truth, the Holy One, blessed be He, is like His name. Like His name, meaning HaKodesh Baruch Hu, right? He is above it all, HaKodesh, separate, right? In a certain sense. And the certain sense is as follows. Even though He fills all worlds, in the upper worlds and the lower worlds. From the highest of worlds down to this grubbest, most physical world down here below. As is written, it says about Hashem that I fill the heavens and the earth. And the word is ani, I myself, my very self. Right? Not a portion of me, but I, my very self. So how do we resolve this? On the one, it says Hashem is a chelik for me, that my chelik is Hashem, my portion is Hashem. And on the one hand, Hashem has no portions. He invests himself in the lower world is his very self, ani. His very essence, what he actually is, and his very essence is invested in the world, if you could say such a thing. And not just a ray. So for those of us who've been paying attention along the way, this may ring a bell, because we've had this seeming contradiction before, that Hashem is ein od, there's nothing besides him, and yet there's a lot of stuff besides him. And this resolves to the difference between Soiviv Kalalmi, how he encompasses ani mamish, his ani, his I-ness, his very self fills everything equally. And at the same time, through the process of tzimtzum, he creates the reality of multiplicity, which is called his kavod. So afal bichen, even though his essence is everywhere the same, yet we say, only my kavod, a ray, fills everything. And even though it's a ray which fills everything, nevertheless, he is and I'll put at the same time, Kodesh Umugdal, entirely separate from that Mamalik Kol Almin, from filling all worlds, meaning his very essence is not evident in Mamalik Kol Almin, in the way he fills all worlds with the infinite diversity of worlds. So that infinite diversity hides an infinite singularity. That's one way of saying Mamalik Kol Almin, an infinite diversity. His infinite singularity fills all that. And that's called Kodesh Umugdal, separate. He is equally separate, meaning equally hidden, equally present in all of his essence in the upper worlds as well as in the lower worlds. But at the same time, he's not grasped within them, meaning you can't touch it. You can't see it like I'm grasping this pen. You can't get a hold of it, that essence. In a nitfis klal b'seichem, chas v'sholem within the worlds, b'tefisa, with an actual grasp of in the neshamas nishmas ha'odem begufay, that the soul has, with the soul is in the body, al derech mashal, and by way of an example, kamashikosim, b'machem acher b'richos, it is written at length in other places, and where he's referring to the Tanya itself, where he has discussed this in many different, or a number of different contexts. So, I mean, one thing that really should become clear as a working process within ourselves, that we contain these two different aspects: Mamalik Almin, 613 limbs, organs, sinews, right? Eser koichos, 10 powers, abad down to Malchus, just like the 10 spheros, and all the worlds are the same in that respect. They're all pieces of, so to speak, portions of. That's the beginning, right? My Tevchel Kenu, how great is my portion, my Goralena, my portion. They're all portions of godliness, and we call that godliness Kavoidai, his ray, the way he irradiates and illuminates worlds differently, where Atzilus is a very different quality of world than down here below. But at the same time, he fills them all equally with what's called his Or HaSoivev, his all-encompassing, and his essence is invested in everything, as expressed in another place at length. Well, as therefore, since worlds, by definition, are, number one, again, oilam miloshen helam, concealed, and there's a concealment of godliness. That's what makes them jump into existence as something seemingly separate, because godliness is hidden from them. And the second part of this is an axiom that since they're in that state of separation, so to speak, or tzimtzum, contraction, they can't receive worlds and souls, can't receive the delight, can't receive the illumination, the life force, directly and simply only from the Or HaSoivev, which is God's essence. What do the worlds receive? And what is our chelek elikah, when we call about our portion? I mean, our piece. If it's a piece, it belongs to that when we express it as a piece, we're expressing the soul's adherence to the world of Mamalik Almin. And Mamalik Almin is rak hahispashtus. It's just the flow of hachayas, of the life force. Asher HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechaya elyon mitartonim, with which God injects his essence into everything and enlivens and brings them into being, the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Who are there much, this is by way of example. So this effulgence, that's the word they use in English a lot, this illumination of rays, right, which is Mamalik Kalam, and God is invested entirely in them, his essence is invested in them, but what's visible, so to speak, what we see is the pieces, the chalakim, the portions, chelak. And that chelak is only a ma'ira mishma yisborach. It's only an illumination, a light from God's holy name. Shehu v'shmei echad, and at the same time, he and his name are one. That itself encapsulates it. He, the allness, and his name, the particularization, Yud K Vav K, are one. Mamali and Soivev are one. Mashikazav is written, Ki niskav shemei lavadoi, his name is exalted alone. Rak ziv haidu ala orders v'shemayim. It's only a ray which flows down to over the earth and the heavens. V'ha'orazu, and this ray, mislabeshes mamish be'olyonim v'tachtoinim, it encloses itself into the upper and lower worlds, v'hachayesim, to enliven them, v'nisveses b'seichem, and is grasped, is contained within them, al yedei memutzim rabim, through many intermediaries and many tzimtzumim, and any contractions and shrinkages of the effulgence of the essence of God. So whenever you're talking multiplicity, which worlds are infinitely multiple, meaning there are an infinite number of them, but when you're talking number, you're talking mamalik kalalman. When you're talking wholeness, you're talking soiviv kalalman. So we're getting a sense here what it means that God could be divided into pieces, right? We're back to our pasuk. Ma'atayv chelkeinu. How great is your portion? He portions things out in the world in the structure called mamalik kalalman. So things have variant levels of receptivity to and revelation of godliness in the structure called mamalik kalalman, which is characterized by many tzimtzumim, many contractions. Tzimtzumim rabim v'atzumim, many and strong contractions or condensations. The histalshlus hamadregas, as the leveled upon levels of worldliness and thingness, right? Separate. This is this and not that. Come down and down and down. Derek olav va'ilo, in the way of effects and causes, which is another language. Whenever you hear the language of cause and effect, or say they're histalshlus, a chain of descent, you're talking God as he is manifest in ha'oras, in rays, in portions, in chalakim, in pieces, versus when you're speaking about atzmas, essence of God himself, not chelek. In other words, even when we use the language chelek, that our soul is a chelek elakam and ma'amamish, we're talking about the soul as it becomes invested and begins to be designed to come into, designed and then does invest itself in the lower world, which is ultimately in the body. But when we're talking about the source of the godly soul, the source of the godly soul is close to his essence. That's today's Tanya. Comments? Questions?
Avram, can you repeat the first pasuk that we were learning on?
Sure. Ashreinu matov chalkeinu ma'anon migaleinu. Ashreinu matov chalkeinu u'manahi g'iraleinu. Right? That's the first part. How good is our happy are we? How good is our chelek, our portion, and how sweet is our lot. We've done a lot of explaining here about chelek. Does that help you? I mean, that's the pasuk. Is that what you meant?
So when you hear the pasuk, it sounds like the expression is, from our perspective, that we have a portion as Jewish people in the essence of God. Creates all of us, creates us also. We have like a part of that.
Well, that's what he's saying. Chalkeinu, how about good is our portion.
Right, but when you explain the opposite directive.
What do you mean?
Well, the explanation was when God manifests his essence through mamalet.
That's chalakim. That's correct.
So,
and the connection we have, well, the other connection is the connection that we have to his essence, which is his soiviv kalam.
No, so that's not what I mean. I'll try it again. The pasuk, when you hear it, it sounds like it's our emotional, spiritual, mental response that we're happy, we're rejoicing in the fact that we're a part of creation that has a connection to the essence of Hashem. But when the Alter Rebbe, as it's being taught right now, first explains it, it's talking about the perspective of that Hashem's, maybe the same thing, sounds different, that Hashem's portion.
It is different.
Not about our experience. It's about that Hashem's portion comes down through Mamale. So this doesn't connect so easily.
No, you misunderstand. The connection to Chelkenu is our connection to Mamale Kolalman. And then we have something deeper than that, which is our connection to Soviet Kolalman. But Chelkenu is our portion, our connection to godliness as it manifests in Mamale Kolalman.
So it's not talking about the chelik of the Pintele Yid.
The Pintele Yid, there's two levels of Pintele Yid, what we call chelik elakam emal, right? You've heard that expression?
Right.
He's making it very clear that whenever you're talking about halakim, chelek, you're talking or mamale. You're not talking or hasoive. So the word I'll use is the proximate source, meaning where the soul comes out in a manner that it can be invested in a body. That's chelek. That's a part of God. It's a part of the godliness, which we call mamale kolalman. In addition to that, that's the proximate source. The root source of the godly soul is in his mamish, in his etzem. Remember, when God decided to create,
now
he
you
consulted.
answered it. Now I got it. Thank you. That was the answer I needed, the connection. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Hello, it's Riza.
Yeah.
So I also agree with, I think it was Sarah who spoke. Because, when I saw this pasuk,
First of all, stop, Riza, stop. What do you mean you agree with her that what?
That this is the Baal HaTanya is giving us a way of looking at the words Ashreinu Matov Chalkenu that is different than what would appear at first glance.
Well, first of all, the main thing he's giving us is not just that, but the difference between the word Chalkenu and Goyralain. And so far, we've just spoken pretty much about Chalkenu.
So this is very, this is saying that our chelek is all about Hashem.
It's about saying that it's saying that our chelek, each one has a chelek in the living God, right? That's an expression.
So
and that chelek, and he's telling you that chelek, each one of us have a different chelek, because we're talking mamale kalam. Each one, and the other, will flip it, soon. At the same time, we all come from a singular source, right? When deep in the essence of Hashem. But so far, what he's been talking primarily about is the way of halakim. He's made it very clear. Halak means pieces, parts. And what's the manifestation of godliness to which we can attach that an understanding of parts and levels and differentiation? That's what parts are. That's called, he doesn't use the expression here, but that's what's called Seder Histalshalis, the Tzimtzumim, Lamali Kolam. That's what he's told us.
Right. And until now, I thought of Chalkenu as just my life, or Torah, or my part in Torah.
Right.
But it's not about me, it's about Hashem.
Don't throw that.
My lot in life is to be every day one with Hashem.
But don't throw that away, what you've said. What you said is true. Each one of us have a different chelek, and therefore, because we have a different chelek, then what you say is true. Each one of us have our own individual, very precisely individualized state of being down here, which is different from the guy next door or the woman next door. And we have viva la difference. It's amazing. the infinite number of differentialities that Hashem has created in all the worlds. And we celebrate that. Vive la différence, as they say in French. And that's when you saw that characteristic of differences, godly differences. I mean, souls that are all part of God, but at the same time have uniqueness about them. This is the Chelkenu, our Chelek.
Well, isn't what you just said to Rosie, isn't that what gives us our unique missions? I mean, that's the purpose.
Yes, of course, of
Hard
course.
to hold, but we're
Why do you
meant
say?
to-
Why do you say but, isn't it? Of course, that's what gives us
Yeah.
our unique mission.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
That's what makes your Chelek different from my Chelek, right? You've
But
got a
we-
portion
we
over
share
there.
one thing, but we share
Mhm.
one thing, which is what you said at the end to me. We share the fact that it's all sourced in the essence of God, where it's
Absolutely.
one. Okay,
That's,
so we
yes,
we have to keep both in mind,
you got it.
right?
Soiviv and Mamali operate together, but they're described in different characteristics. Yes, beautiful. No, this is an important discussion because this is a fundamental that we're all amazingly, divinely inspired and different from each other. And at the same time, we are all essentially one. Not a bad thing to keep in mind as we go into the world today, but I'll leave the bechains up to you. Therefore, so what?
Well, we could celebrate our uniquenesses and try and manifest them, and we can remember in our heart of hearts that we're all one, and therefore act from this point of Abishafil and connectedness through that oneness.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You got it. I mean, you got something. Okay, Amir Hashem will meet again tomorrow and take this further. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Todah.